So let's get to the layout 2 for week 3 day 1. So the layout that is actually as you can see right here, this is the layout that we will be building using grids and flexes. So let's just there is this one fundamental question that might have come to your mind as well, as to how to decide between grids and flexes. So to be quite honest, the definition itself is quite explanatory when it comes to the difference between flexes and grids, because flexes are one directional and grids are multidirectional. So using the same logic, what we can do is just look at any given layout and try to break them down at the most granular level possible into their simplest forms. So for example, I'll just show you this this one small example right here. So let's just take this layout for example. Now we have, as we can see, the most granular level are the boxes which are defining the columns, and at the most granular level in the horizontal way, we can see navigation and the boxes, they kind of define two different rows. So this clearly indicates a need for grids. So yeah, we'll see a few examples where flexes will be more appropriate than let's just say grids. So yeah, let's just start with this. Okay, so this is what the result will look like. So now we have as you might have already gone through the the layout 1's video, you must have understood by now that containers are where we are containing the entire structure of the grid. So the display is grid, and the grid template columns are one FR and one FR each. Now, so when it comes to FRs, you can go back to the layout 1 to understand the concept of what FRs are and how FRs work. So let me just make it a little bit more clearer here. So what we have done here is just assign two FRs to each column, because as you can clearly see here that left box and right box have equal width. So what we're doing here is just giving each of the boxes one half of it, because that is how you are kind of trying to break the columns down. See, when it comes to breaking columns down, because that is the most basic way of defining your entire grid. So the idea is just go to the most granular level and try to compare the widths of the elements. So the smallest elements here are the left box and the right box right here. So that is what we have based our template columns on. So moving on to the grid template rows, if you really look at the structure, this is a little bit more obvious. So once we tackle more complex layouts, you can get an idea of what going most granular level means. So let's just see, as you can clearly see that navigation. From here itself, from the question itself, you can clearly see that the navigation is almost 1/4 of what left box and right box heights are. So based on those proportions, that is how we kind of break them down into 1 FR and 4 FR. So that is what it means as well. So yeah, but the thing is, we have already covered this entire layout 1 is the entire structure in layout 1, because they are very similar. But yeah, just for the clarity of it, let me just go through the entire structure once again. So we have the head where the background is yellow. We are starting at row 1, and guys, let me emphasize here, because grid area is the most important part when it comes to designing a grid, because grid area is how you are placing the grids. So the children grid, their placements and their spanning is what defines the entire grid. So you have to be very accurate about the grid area based on your layouts. So let me just emphasize on that. So we're starting with the starting row, the starting column, the ending row, and the ending column. Okay, so moving on, what we have here is the navigation bar. We'll start from row 1, we'll start from column 1, we'll end in row 1 itself, as you can see, and end at end at the second column. Now a few of you might have this question: if it's ending at second column, what is the 3 doing here? Now this is where spans and lines come into picture. This is very important to kind of remember. As you can see, if I replace the line by 2, it just comes till the end of first block. Now that is how grid area operates. So when when CSS reads through grid area, what it does is it takes the digits and treats them as lines. So if I put a border, okay, we don't really need borders here, so let's just go with grid area instead. So we are starting with row 1, so that is the first line. You see this the line 1, then there is this line 2, and this is the line 3. So when you are saying go from column 1 to column 2, so that is what we're defining, go from line 1 to line 2. Yes, so to cover this entire section, the width of the second column, however, we have another option called span. As you can see, it spans out throughout the second column as well, and reaches the end of the end of the second column. So the other alternative for that, if you really want to use just digits and nothing else, so that is where the 3 part comes into picture. So spanning and digits are more of just different representations. So that that is one part where you can actually go with your own logic and try and define the way you want it to be defined. Okay, moving on to the box 1. Yeah, so it's a very similar takeaway from here as well. So we're starting at row number 2, starting from column number 1, ending in row number 2, and ending at line number 2. I want to make it very specific. As you can properly see here, that line number 2 is exactly where we wanted it to end. Now spanning through 2 would have completely covered this entire block. That would have rendered the point mute. So we had to give the line based on its requirement as well. So the similar thing goes with green as well, and that's what we have done. Okay, now moving on to the smaller layout. Okay, so layout too small, as you can see, is a unidirectional structure, because it's just been defined in a single column. So as we have already discussed in the when it comes to the layout 1, we should be going for flex here, but as you can see here, I had to go with grid. Now the question is, why go for grid when you can actually go for flexes? Now this is where there are a few anomalies when it comes to the requirements. So let me just clear this anomaly off for you. As you can see, the difference between the layout 1 and layout 2 here is the placement of the boxes. So the box 1 is placed higher up from box 2 when it comes to div. Now we can't really change the HTML, so we have to play around with CSS itself to make this kind of structure possible. So we are ditching the flexes for grid. See, that was the point of my explanation of choosing between flexes and grids, because these are the kind of scenarios, to be very honest with you, these are the kind of scenarios where these things come down to the logic. Yeah, the logic clearly dictates that we have to use we should be using flex, but because of the requirement we have to change into grids instead. Okay, so moving on to the entire structure of it, @media, max width, these are this should be very clear by now, but yeah, let me just reiterate about it. So the thing with max width is any width size below 800 pixel will be having this structure that we have defined in the @media. Now moving on to the section, now we have defined a grid where the grid template is 1 FR. Now 1 FR is 100% in this case, because we don't have any other FRs to actually kind of break it down. So one FR can work as the entire structure itself. Okay, so FRs kind of give us that kind of flexibility as well. So that is one of the reasons. Now grid template rows, as you can clearly see from the requirement layout, is navigation. The height of the navigation block is almost thrice of each of the boxes. Almost 1/3 of each of the boxes. So the other way around will be each of the boxes are almost thrice of the navigation. That is why the definition of rows have been broken down to 1 FR, 3 FR, and 3 FR. So what this does is basically break the entire block down into 7 FRs and then assign fractionally the best. So assigns each of them the height fractionally instead. Okay, now width is auto because we don't want to mess around with the width, and because width is anyways 100%, so grid will take care of that as well. Now going to the head, please make sure that you understand the grid area concept very well, because this is exactly what will define your grids completely. So you have to have a very clear understanding of what grid area does. Now grid area, it starts with row start. So we are starting from row 1 we are starting from column 1. Since we only have a single column, as you can see from the entire grid areas of all the boxes, we are just contained to 1 1 1 the start column and 1 1 1 the end column, and that is for a very obvious reason, because we only have one column to play around with. So moving on to each of the block, as you can see, it starts with row 1 and goes till row 1, and the similar way it's just a single row containment that we have defined in grid area here. So yeah, that kind of sums up the entire layout too. Thank you.